Let's go live now to Sydney to the From the Heart and Soul event, which is a celebration of joint resolution of peak religious organisations.
What we feel, sometimes silence serves that purpose better, so I would ask that we just have a moment to send our thoughts to Noel and our respects to his family, the Pearson family and the Hopevale community. I pay my respects to the Gadigal and Wongal people whose lands we gather on today and whose lands I have made my home in. But my spiritual heart resides in the desert, in the centre of Australia, in my grandmother's country, Aranda country. And today is a spiritual gathering, unprecedented spiritual gathering. And I thought I would like to convey something of my own religion to sit alongside the world's religions represented by these religious groups today. And it is fitting to draw on a women's tradition that we use when we open our religious ceremonies in Australia. It's fitting because I am a woman, but we're also in this place that takes the name of Barangaroo, a Camaragal woman whose country we are in and who greeted the First Fleet on their arrival. So I'd like you to take your mind away from this place for a moment, if you may, and imagine the desert in Central Australia at night time as we would perform our ceremonies. Lit by the campfires, the women who dance in the red earth of Central Australia, and the Algera amongst us, which is conjured in our ceremonies. The Algera in our language is translated as the dreaming in English. As they dance, the words that are sung in Aranda conjure the Algera, and I wanted to share with you those words from those ancient songs that are passed down through thousands of years to someone like me to continue those traditions. And this is the words of the opening ceremony that the women sing. Because I am a woman, I shine. The Spirit is with me in the sky. Standing in the sky, in the midst of the Spirit, I stand in the midst of the dreaming. We shine within the dreaming. We glitter like in a dream. So I can't do justice to those words or the dreaming, the Algera, here alone without those women on stage in a suit in Sydney. But if together we take this country to a successful referendum, which I have confidence that we will, I will bring the women from my community here and we will ochre up, as we say, and we will bring our song and our Algera and we will bring the Spirit to be alongside yours and celebrate the country as we move forward together in unity. It is an unprecedented moment today of great national significance, I believe. There has never been such a gathering of religious groups who have supported Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. These include the Anglican Church of Australia, the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference, the Australian National Imams Council, the Australian Sangha Association, the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, the Hindu Council of Australia, the National Council of Churches in Australia, the National Sikh Council of Australia, and the Uniting Church in Australian Assembly. What a lineup. Please put your hands together for these groups. And speaking of strong women, we commit to walk with the new Minister for Indigenous Australians, the Honourable Linda Burney, Wiradjuri woman, as she embarks on one of the great moral challenges of our nation, to bring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people together with their fellow Australians, finally. Minister Burney has said, building a consensus around a referendum requires patience, discussion, a little bit of negotiation, and obviously it requires talking to people who agree, people who disagree, and understanding where people are coming from. But it also means inspiring people to understand this is the moment in Australian history. It is important and everyone can be a part of it. I think we all agree with her. Because we know people here today have been a part of the 1967 referendum. My mother was part of the 1967 referendum. We have learnt the lesson from history, from our most successful referendum ever, that it takes people from all walks of life, all religions, all ages, genders, professions, and importantly, in this moment, all political persuasions to move our nation forward to successful referendum. We ask for a voice in our own affairs, an Indigenous, grassroots advisory body, guaranteed by the founding document of this modern nation. Not a veto, just a voice. Non-binding, but a constitutional promise that Indigenous people will always be heard, that though our advice may not always be heeded, we will always have a place at the table in this, our own country. This is a practical solution, not mere symbolism. Indigenous people know our issues on the ground best. Decisions in the past have often been made for political choice, not for our best interests. This is a unifying moment. It is our chance to close the gap. And the Australian people are growing in their support for this movement, as evidenced here today by all of you. We have the opportunity in our time to forge a modern democracy, a democracy like Canada and Aotearoa New Zealand that takes into account its unique heritage, its deep past and its future as an identity in a new nation. A voice referendum will be a constitutional commitment to ongoing dialogue and partnership between Indigenous people and the Australian state. Today, Australian religious communities join with Australians' Indigenous communities to send a message to our political leaders. Open your hearts. We want to talk with you about this in good faith. We want to work with you to make national unity a reality. I urge us all to follow the example of these religious organisations that they have set. Let us put our differences aside and work together towards a successful referendum. But in seeking change, we know there is risk. People have accused us, and this hurts deeply, of pushing apartheid in Australia. How could they suggest that? That we want a third chamber in Parliament. That this is for elite blacks, not for our people, our own people on the ground. That we care only about symbolism, not the everyday welfare of our own people. Can you believe this? And that we are paid mountains of dollars to push this change in our country. And on it goes. And in my darker moments, I recall the famous poem, If. Now, Rudyard Kipling had his limitations, but he could string a sentence together, and a part of this poem resonates with me. If you can bear to hear the truth you have spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. And he finishes, of course, by saying that if you can accept this, then you will be a man. Well, this was the favourite poem of my father, Charles Perkins, and he is much in my mind of late, as he worked tirelessly to achieve the aspirations embodied in the Uluru Statement from the heart. For these aspirations are not new. Our people have pressed for these things for decades. And I wonder at times, do we, like him, have to die waiting for our country to come to terms with its ancient past, the moral question of its colonial foundation, to mature, as Kipling describes, into a mature nation? The time surely has come, and the dignity of the Uluru Statement from the heart asks us to lift our eyes up. This issue transcends political divides, and it deserves bipartisan support. And it is with a full heart and great hope and positivity that I stand here today at this very historical moment to introduce the joint resolution. Today, this resolution is released by Religious Organisations of Australia, and it reads: on this day, the 27th of May in 2017, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people came together at Uluru and asked Australians to walk with them toward a better future. Through the Uluru Statement from the heart, Indigenous Australians asked for constitutional recognition through a constitutionally guaranteed voice in their own affairs. As leaders representing diverse religious groups and communities, we declare our support of the Uluru Statement from the heart and its call for a First Nations voice guaranteed by the Constitution. We endorse this reform as necessary, as right and reasonable. Indigenous Australians must be now afforded their rightful place in the Australian Constitution. There have been many processes and much work completed. The one thing left to do is let the Australian people have their say. We call on political leaders to make immediate bipartisan action to hold a referendum on a First Nations voice. There can be no more delay. Our country has wanted and waited too long for justice. No truer words were spoken. From my heart and soul, I thank you and your organisations for your considerable collective influence behind this cause. Your unity is noteworthy. For such different religions, no doubt, disagree on many issues. Yet, in this age of increasing polarisation, you have transcended difference of belief, culture and tradition to agree on this one true thing, that a constitutional voice for Indigenous people is necessary, right and reasonable. That you have united in support of this reform speaks to your moral conviction about the justice of this proposal, your empathy and generosity of spirit, and to the ability of the Uluru Statement to bring Australians together. I hope that each of your organisations will continue to advocate alongside us. I ask you to each deliver your message to our politicians and to pray for bipartisan cooperation on a voice referendum. And I end by asking that when this referendum is called, to join us in working hard to secure success in this, the most important of votes. Thank you.